wanted to talk about a little problem I'm setting out to solve, actually. A project I'm working on right now. I'm doing a lot of drawer boxes with lock miter joints. And if you do any searching on the internet about lock miter joints, if you haven't set out to try this yourself already, you're going to find a lot of people complaining about what a pain in the neck they are to set up. And it's true. Specifically, the issue is getting that bit positioned just right. I actually have Rockler's lock miter bit and bought their corresponding setup block. This little guy right here, which is nice, but this is set up for 5/8 inch stock and 3/4 inch stock, and I'm using 1/2 inch stock, so this doesn't really help me all that much. The biggest problem I found, though, was not the positioning of the bit. Sure, it took some trial and error, and I went through a lot of test pieces to get it to where I found the fit was just right. The biggest problem I've had is actually keeping the pieces safely positioned on the router table. And the reason behind that problem is inherent to the way this lock miter bit has to cut. If these are going to be joined up here on the corner with a lock miter joint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one and I'm going to cut it flat, like that on the table, right? Router table down here. I'm going to set that aside. Then I'm going to cut the other one vertically against the fence. And if my bit's positioned right, they'll fit together. The problem is, cutting that vertical piece, if you get any wobble, or any, whether side to side, or front to back, your joint's going to be sloppy. It's not going to be a good result. And you can obviously have some danger issues when you're routing it that way. If the piece gets caught, cockeyed in the bit or something like that, it can want to jerk and kick back on you. So I'm going to set out today to do a little upgrade to my fence in the hopes that I can better support these vertical pieces. And so first, let's take a closer look at the router table. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'll show you the bit setup and the problem that I'm having. And then as I actually go to set up the solution, or what I hope is the solution, I'll go through step by step what I'm doing, and hopefully it turns out to be successful. So let's take a closer look. You can see I have the lock miter bit installed here, and I've got the fence up very close to the bit issue here. And what happens is, if I run a piece vertically through here, it's wanting to do a little bit of wiggle right there. So let's take a look at what I might actually do if I go to cut a lock miter joint. The first piece I'm going to take and I'm going to pass through like this. And I can do this with a miter sled here in the slot. I can do this with a coping sled. Push blocks, obviously you want to be a little bit careful about routing a piece, that's thin like this, with its end just right against the fence, because that's going to want to kick around on you like that. The problem I run into is when I'm going to go to cut my vertical piece like this. And I'm running this across, and this piece is short. I mean, relatively speaking, it's about half of it is supported by the fence here, and that's not too bad. The problem is it's a very awkward piece to hold. I mean, I can take a push block and I can stick up against like this, but it's difficult to exert the pressure to keep that stable against the fence and to keep it moving through the cut consistently. So what I'm thinking is I need two things here. I need some additional support above the fence so that this piece is not inclined to want to rock at all, regardless of where I put pressure on it on the face. And I also want to come up with some kind of a sled or a jig solution that will ride on the fence to guide this piece through. Just like I have a coping sled down here, or a miter sled that I can run through the slot in the table, I want something that will ride on the fence and give me just a little bit more support and a little more consistency in this cut. My router table, just quick history on it here, it's the Bench Dog Pro Max extension intended to go in the wing of your table saw, which is exactly what I have here. And then I have a Bench Dog lift installed, and the fence that came with the Pro Max, the Bench Dog Pro Max. So it's a whole Bench Dog setup here. It's very nice, very consistent, nice level table, and the fence is very solid and reliable as well. What's really nice about their setup is they have this little accessory that I just picked up. It's called the Pro Riser. It's for extending the height of your fence, raising the height of your fence. So if you don't have a Bench Dog table fence etc. You don't need this. You can build either a secondary face on your fence, do a cutout here. It could be something super simple, piece of plywood that you just cut out to give clearance for the bit and clamp it right to the face, or install some bolts in there, lock it into your track. There's a variety of ways you can handle that. What's nice about this is I can actually build a vertical extension piece that'll sit on here, nice and flush right where I want it. I can slide it on when I need it, I can pop it off when I don't, and it rides in this track on the back of the fence. So that's going to be pretty handy. I oftentimes don't need that much height. I mean, a lot of the operations I'm doing are down here very low, so it's going to be nice to be able to take that off and get it out of the way. And oftentimes this fence isn't even on here. I mean, this is on my table saw. So when I'm not using the router table, I'll take this fence off and stick it on a shelf. So for storage, it's going to be nice to be able to separate that riser from the fence itself. The genius of this kit is really in these brackets, and there are 4 of them. And the idea is that you'll supply your own 3/4 inch material that will actually make up your fence extension. That could be plywood, that could be MDF, whatever you're looking for. You're actually going to mount your 3/4 inch material on this longer face, and that's going to sit behind the fence like that, and that offset is 3/4 of an inch. So it's going to fill that, it's going to line up nicely with the front of your fence here. We're going to be in good shape. This hex bolt is going to slide right into the track on the back. We'll be able to tighten this down like that. Nice and solid. 4 of those will be positioned, obviously 2 at the ends and then the others spaced in the middle. That'll give it good solid support all the way across, and we'll be in good shape here. And then it has these screws that come through and will actually go right into the plywood or MDF that we're going to use. They do say in the instructions that you're going to want to go from 2.5 inches to 6 inches high, so you don't want to make a 12 or 14 inch panel that sits up on top of here, because obviously you only have support up the height of these brackets. So let me see what I have in the way of 3/4 inch material. We'll cut a piece, we'll mount it here, and we'll see how it works. So I happen to have actually a nice sized piece of 3/4 inch plywood that's in pretty good shape, and it's nice and straight. I may at some point actually replace it with MDF, we'll see. For now, we're going to just play with it on here. I cut it to the length of the aluminum, which in the case of the Pro Max for the table saw extension is 28 inches. So that fits right there. I went ahead and cut mine 5 inches high. I didn't go quite to what they say the max of 6 inches is. This is really going to be plenty for my purposes. But all right, so I'm going to go ahead and thread these hex bolts in here on each one and put the little T-knob on. Get them roughly positioned where I want them on the back side of the fence. You may very well be able to adapt this same system even to a non-bench dog fence, as long as you've got the track here in the back. Even if you had to get some different bolts, that's not really the complicated part here. The important part is these brackets. Here we go. That piece is installed. Super simple, and it's rock solid too. Very little motion there, especially down here right where it meets the fence. I mean, with everything tightened down, that is some solid support. And now, many of my pieces are going to be supported all the way through here, and that's going to be just great. Now the other trick is kind of that jig or that sled we were talking about. When I'm pushing a piece down here on the table like this, as you recall, I have options. I have a lot of options. Up here, I don't have as many options. I don't have a slot in the fence that will really work like this. I might actually be able to rig up something that would ride in this track here, but I'm not quite sure exactly what that would look like. So I think what I want to do is build something that'll ride up on top of the fence here that I can clamp my piece into, and it could even give me the ability to run a piece of scrap behind my workpiece to prevent tear out. So I think there's some interesting options here for quality of cut, even beyond just supporting the workpiece. So this should work out well if we can come up with a nice reliable system here at the top. And what I have in mind is really just a simple plywood jig. I think I'm going to use a couple of scraps actually that I made when I cut this top piece to size. So what I have in mind, again going back to our very rough scraps, top here, and again just a piece of plywood, and there'll be a vertical piece, something like that. And I'll actually run it all the way down, or maybe not quite all the way down to the table, but farther down than this piece is. And it will run like this. I'll put another piece on the back that'll give it support that way. And my workpiece can sit in here. It won't have a top on it, so if my workpiece is, up to here, or if it's 10 inches above the table, it's not really going to matter. But what this will do is it'll then give me a place I can clamp my workpiece front to back, and I can also clamp it here if I want to. So it'll give me some really good support at the top. It should ride pretty smooth. It'll also give me a better place to hold on to do this, to guide it through the cut, to give it that forward motion, as opposed to trying to push on the back of the workpiece or something silly. So let me cut a few more pieces of plywood here. We'll see what we end up with. Look what I came up with. The measurements here are nothing special. I basically just set a piece up here and determined about what would be this side of the fence to roughly the start of the bit, to accommodate maybe a large raised panel or something like that if I was going to try to get it in here. But again, I didn't even really measure that out. So I cut one piece here that's about 2.5 inches high, and then I cut another piece the same width and just a little bit higher behind that, so that that would give me support in the back there. And then I cut this vertical piece, which is going to actually give me support on the back of my material. And it doesn't come all the way down to the table. I left myself almost an inch. Actually, it's about 7/8, I think. It's going to give me support through most of the piece. Very solid, with 4 screws up here on top, and I put screws in here and layer a tight bond between each piece of plywood, so it's not going anywhere. But I did want to leave myself a nice buffer down here, so there's no way this is going to hit the bit. There's no way this is going to get caught up on the table if something happened to be a little bit out of alignment. So I'm not even gonna worry about that. And I could probably even take more off if I wanted to use a higher bit, or I could make another one of these jigs. That wouldn't be too difficult. So what I'm going to be able to do now is take a very tall piece, and we'll use this lovely scrap of plywood as an example. And the end of this piece isn't even square, but if this was going to sit flat on the table, I'd lean it up against my support piece, get it right where I want it. I can shim it up if I need to, whatever I want to do. Hold this nicely in place. I can go multiple directions if I'm so inclined.